Hello, and welcome everybody to a new conversation of the Altering Shifting Communing series, a project presented and hosted by Call for Curators. I am Ilaria Conti, the curator of the series, which was initiated earlier on this year to really give visibility to curatorial practices that rethink critically and ethically the role of curating. So we are live streaming every other Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Berlin time. And in doing so, we present a conversation with different practitioners, projects, or independent cases. And in choosing who to invite, what we try to do is to steer away from somehow mainstream mechanisms in curating and really bring into this virtual space practices that rethink what we do in communal terms, that are rooted in process and in research, and also that foster meaningful relationships with publics, artists, researchers, and civil society at large. So through this series, as I always say, what we want to do is to consider how we do things rather than just what we do, and also how certain projects that are active and present are working to bring about key changes that we want to see happen in our professional fields. So today I am very happy to welcome Laila, Hida, and Francesca Masoero from the Marrakech-based space Les 18. Hello to both, and thank you for being here today. As always, we will have a 40-minute conversation, and in the meantime, I invite everybody to ask questions through the comment section on YouTube and Facebook, and also to connect with us by email to share ideas, feedback, and I will share right now our email address, as I always do, so that people know how to contact us. Here we go. And now we're back in sync. I know that we lost each other for a moment. Unfortunately, StreamYard is a bit tricky, so please don't panic. Sometimes the internet or Wi-Fi is not strong enough. So as we begin, first of all, I want to congratulate Laila on being part of this year's Apollo Magazine 40 Under 40 Africa, and I have the link here for those who want to read more. I think it's a wonderful present, so congratulations. And now the very first question, again, that I always ask in order to begin the conversation, and in light of the moment we've been living, is how are you and where are you, and how have this past months been for both of you?
Should I go on?
Please.
Thank you. Hi, Ilaria, and thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here and to share this conversation with Francesca. Also, she's been away for a long time, and so I'm always happy to see her through a screen. I'm in Marrakech, and yeah, it's I'm doing well, very well actually. Just because we recently have reopened Les 18. We had our opening last week, and it went very well. It was a very intense and moving moment for all of us, the team of Les 18, even those who are away. But yeah, I think we all have been waiting for this moment for a long time, and craving to be back again in the space and to share these moments physically. Although we've been working together through Skype or through web platform, but for us, it's always something different to be in the space. And it's true that these past months have been quite difficult. And difficulties have been different for each of us, but for me personally, it was very weird and strange moment and interesting moment, and all these things that a lot of people are sharing at the same time, because it's just new to us, something that we haven't experienced before, to be on the lockdown. And Morocco has experienced one of the longest lockdown. We've been in confinement for more than 3 months, and then gradually reopened again the cities, but the quarantine was so long that somehow we still in the process of getting out of this, and it's not finished. We feel that we always have to somehow ask permission to go from one place to another. We don't fully access the places that we used to go. We don't feel completely free to go out at any time, depending on which city we live in. There are lockdowns and a certain time to be out, etc. So to reopen the space was kind of reviving and very happy moment.
Well, thanks, Hilaria, also for the proposal to have this conversation. I'm in Torino, in my hometown, since a bit too many months now. It was somehow nice to come back, even though the conditions and the situation wasn't the ideal one back in March, but at this point has become extremely long, and I still feel somehow in displacement in a way. While the first months throughout the COVID and particularly the lockdown period have been somehow also an opportunity to focus on things that were set on the side, to explore some modes to connect that we hadn't really explored much before. I really must say that I do miss being in the space and being in Marrakech and being back in what I feel being also my community a lot now, and so I very much look forward to get back on a plane, surprisingly, and go to Marrakech, which should happen pretty soon, actually. So
I hope that will happen soon, and thank you for being so transparent. I think it's complex for many of the people that we have been inviting so far in this series, and that's why it's important for me to maintain this question even as we transition out somehow of the present moment. And out is a big word perhaps at this stage. Exactly. So we were talking about the space that you developed in Marrakech in Morocco called Les 18. Here we go. And I would say, let's just start from the basics and ask you whether you can tell us a little bit about the project, how it started, when it started, and also what is the key vision for it? What was the key vision when all of this began?
Well, I can tell the little story that Francesca knows by heart, but it's always nice to tell it as just a fiction, because it is fiction, and sometimes things happens in life that are unexpected. You just take the opportunity of doing something with these things. And while I was moving back from Paris in 2010, I was spending some time between Casablanca and Marrakech, my hometown and Marrakech. And at that time, my personal story took me to have the opportunity of having this house at some point. And so it was just a decision to make, to whether take this house or don't take it. And at this moment, I felt that I was in a moment where I needed to explore something new. Also, I was trying so many things when I went back from Paris, and I tried many cultural projects. But I had an intuition. That's the word, I think. I met this house because it was a meeting, and I had an intuition of that it would be a place to bring people together and to share it with others without any more specific vision on what it should be or what should be proposed or show with this place. And at that moment, that was the only thing, that it was a kind of a burst of sharing this place. And so I called my first collaborator, who's also a very good friend of mine, Hisham, Bouzid, who came and started the project with me in 2013. And we opened the house and we invited friends, a very small community of friends, artists each time. And it was kind of underground and not a secret place, but at the same time, we didn't communicate any of our events. So it was just from word and mouth. And yeah, we kept on doing this, and we invited a lot of artists to show work, and in a very simple way. And we organized a lot of events, of exhibitions, of performances. It's just like it is now. I can just say that maybe we are more organized, more professional, more official, because the truth is that for 3 years, we were not official. So the 18 didn't have any official papers. We were not registered as an organization or as an association. And the first time we had to register, it was before we realized if we want to go further and if we want to just to be more sustainable and ask for funding, we needed papers. And I personally enjoyed really much the time where we were completely clandestine, just because it is also a way, we are still somehow in this line, in some project, maybe in some way of doing things, because I guess that it is it's part of our mission to question all these formats and all this system and institutions. But at some point, of course, we need to, just to face these things, and if we need to register, then we do it. So this was the beginning, basically, and after I think a couple of years or 3 years, and it was, I think, also the moment the team was starting to grow a little bit more, and the meeting with Francesca was a turning point also for the 18, because it has brought something really new in the way of curating and bringing another also perspective on how a project can bring together several practices and bring all these energies and all this perspective together around the table. And so, yeah, each person who has been part of the project since the beginning somehow have brought his own vision. And it's not one vision, I think it's a multiple visions that comes together and make a place that have this polyphonic kind of way of being. It's just very much a place where people can have a place to, a space to express themselves and experiment. All of us have been experimenting so much things, our own project, our visions. Of course, there are moments of conversation where we all come together and discuss things, if it's right or wrong, if we want to do it this way or that way, before sharing it with the public. But at the same time, we tend to keep it not very rigid and strict, and be very adequate, listening to what the other give us from the team, but as well from outside of the organization. So basically the public, the audience, the community, and what is going on around the street.
That's great. So I would say let's kind of get into the heart of things, talking a little bit about the programs and contents and how you structure the whole project as a whole. So the next question, and this is just a suggestion through which to address the question of programming and what kind of structure for content and research, as you were saying, you have developed collectively through Les 18, I want to take it back to what you mentioned. You met this space, which is traditionally a house, right? A home of the style that one could call traditionally Marrakech. No, it has a distinctive architecture articulated on 2 floors across a small court. So, in a sense, it is a project that maintains a degree of intimacy, right, because of its spatial configuration. But on the other hand, it is a public space. It is nested in the Medina of Marrakech. So I want to ask you if you could talk to us about some of the key and structuring programs of Les 18, but also in this sense, if you could talk to us about how you work with the city and not just in the city, because from our conversations and everything that I've ever experienced or read about Les 18, it seems an important component of the project.
Okay, maybe I can start answering this question. And while doing that, I could maybe share some images with you so you have a bit of a sense of where we are and how it looked like. So let me try, and I hope I won't.
It will work perfectly. There we go.
Will definitely work. But I'll go back from the beginning and open it. So I'll just speak on top of the images, but at least you can see a little bit what the district looks like, and it is indeed first thing, of course, we are in Marrakech, and specifically in the Medina of Marrakech, and that was already somehow a choice to be there and to open a cultural space there, because there are not many other spaces as such inside the Medina, and the Medina has a very specific and particular life that is also very much, or was at least until COVID outbroke, affected by tourism, heavy waves of gentrification, and colonial heritage of exoticism and projections onto it. So there was a framework. I mean, that's also the framework in which we have been working and thinking and trying to critically and self-critically positioning throughout the years. That's a little bit how the space looks like. A house, but little by little, Les 18 has really become a community that has gathered diverse groups of people, moving from those that were maybe more close to us, like young artists, researchers, cultural activists, students. But through time, we have been also trying to work more and more with other, let's call them communities, or other social groups that were more or less proximate to us, either physically or in other terms. In terms, the program of Les 18 throughout the years has really evolved and become a little bit more structured, but we've also always tried to combine the organic and spontaneous, the spontaneity of the first years with an increasing understanding that has really emerged through this process of listening to the context in which we were, of which lines we wanted to develop the most. So today, actually, the way our year-long program of events occurs is precisely this combination of some research lines that I can outline briefly in a moment, that each of which is also somehow the emanation of some of us from the team, more specifically, and that take different forms according to the specific content that we work on. So there are those research lines, and at the same time, there is also more spontaneous programs that we keep having, that go from conversations to performances to exhibitions, that we often host, and that may not be coming necessarily from us, let's say the permanent team, but there are proposals from this larger community of practitioners that we keep having a conversation with. So as I was saying, in general terms, the types of activities we have are exhibitions, residencies, artistic residencies, and residencies of research, and then a quite diverse and multidisciplinary program of events that go from performances, as you're seeing, to workshops, to various types of conversations, etc., etc. Just to briefly mention, there are a few the research lines we're focusing on are specifically Daba Photo, that maybe Laila will talk about in a little bit, and it's a program that exists since 5 years, and it is specifically focusing on photographic practices in Morocco and in the region more broadly, and processes of image making today, starting really from the ground and trying to question and rethink what photography is, moving from the practice that we see, and Laila, as a photographer, also does practice herself too. Another project that is one of our long-term research projects, and maybe we'll talk about later, is called Kanat, that is more specifically related to the politics and poetics of water as an entry to look into forms of commoning that exist in the city of Marrakech, but also beyond the city of Marrakech. And another more recent research line that we have started working on, thanks to two new contributors that have come at Le 18, is called Awal, and that focuses more on oral arts and oral traditions and practices in Morocco in general, but particularly from specific regions, and mainly the Amazirophone regions of Morocco, and that is trying to develop a participative archive on those very practices. Going again back to your question, how do we work with the city? The way in which we work with the city is that we really have been working with people in the city, from individuals to institutions, quite in a quite how to say, like transversal way. We have been having and developing conversations and collaborations with a huge, I mean, a very diverse set of organizations and organisms, going from the ones that are closest to the contemporary art field, so galleries, festivals, the biennial when it existed, the art fair that since a few years exists, to the cinema school, another institution that is somehow our neighbor in the Medina, that is called Dar Bellarj, that combines contemporary art projects with a very strong and important work with different social groups of the Medina in particular, and of course with collectives, duos, artists, designers, and not only from the city and beyond the city, actually. And something that to add on top, that we have been starting working more and more. I'm sorry, there is
It's okay.
an ambulance passing. Working more and more in the last few years has also been the neighborhood in which we are embedded, which is something that has come a little bit later in our process, partly because we needed time to somehow localize ourselves in the neighborhood and start developing a relationship and trying to identify which forms of dialogue we could have with the neighborhood specifically. So it's more or less, it's since, I would say, particularly since 2019 that we have systematically started structuring the forms in which we could dialogue more with the neighborhood, beyond more punctual encounters. Maybe Laila, you want to add something?
Well, I think you have been it's been very specific, but to answer the question of Ilaria, I think it would have been maybe interesting to give a specific example. And I'm thinking about this project that you have organized with the collective that you have put together, Madrasa, and the project is called Sharita. Maybe you want to say a few words about that, or maybe we can discuss it later. But to me, it's one of the projects that really engage with the community. It's engaged with the city in a very simple way, but yet it's very grounded, because the artists that have been invited came with different projects, and I was one of the invited artists, and it was a very cool experience to me, because Francesca and the collective have invited me to intervene in the public space, and I've been wanting to intervene in the public space for a long time. But at the same time, we know that it's not something that it's easy to do. It requires certain procedures, and I haven't chosen the easiest place. I've chosen to intervene on the main square of Marrakech, Place Jamelfna, and that would require a lot of preparation. So the Madrasa Collective have connected with the organization within the square, and then have undertook a number of procedures with the authorities, so that I have the permission to work there and to intervene. And through these small initiatives, we get to understand also the functioning of the city in different levels. On the level of neighborhoods, just people together, people who live in the medina, but at the same time on the level of authority and administration, and so I think through the different projects that we've been undertaking at the 18, we have faced different type of interactions with the city that have given us information through the years that we have used to reinforce also to ground the project within the Medina, but also to write and to make proposals that can make sense also with the context and the people that we want to share this project with.
So, Francesca, do you want to share? Maybe you can show us a couple of images, or some images
I can show you part of a short, one extract of a video that we made that shows a bit of passages of these different interventions that were part of this sort of festival Shrita that Laila was talking about, and that really asked each invited artist to think of an intervention, whether performative or in terms of an installation, that could dialogue with either the present or the past of the city, and some of its dynamics. And they really took questions related to representation, and but also urban dynamics at its core. And it was also the first project that that as Le 18, we did in public space in such a sort of consistent way. So as Laila said, it was also a first test for us to get out of our walls in a way, and come and encounter partly different audiences as well. So let me. Oh, sorry, no, this is the wrong one. Yes.
And do you want to guide us a little bit through what we're seeing?
Sure. Yes. So this was, I'm gonna put the volume a little bit more down. This was an intervention by Eleonora Herder, who is a German artist, and she proposed to create a tour through spaces that have transformed mainly due to tourism in the Medina. So you could basically go see what spaces that once used to have a certain usage now look like. This is another project that a Marrakech artist proposed, and in this case, as you see, it involved actually the street where Le 18 is, and it really goes at the core of the idea of neighboring and sharing. So the proposal from Rashid Houni was to create this installation that would have gathered together those elements that really represent the idea of community, that are the ones with whom you make Minty. This is a performative installation that we set in what is known as the La Place des Esclaves, the slave square. And it is based on a research done by a filmmaker that has been looking into the history of slavery in Morocco in general, and in Marrakech specifically. And she involved, so there was footage of her documentary, and she involved some Senegalese students in reading passages of the history of Marrakech and slavery. This is Leila's intervention, which is called Marrakech, and it's a very playful way to address the relationship between image making and tourism in Jamal Efna, which is really the quintessential representation of all the complexities that characterize Marrakech and in its relationship to tourism and exotization in a way. And maybe Laila can explain it a little bit more. And this was a DJ set organized with Firas Hamdan, who is an architect, researcher, and artist. And he focuses on the transformation in the consumption and understanding of cabaret music from the 80s and 70s and 80s on in the Arab world. And we set the the DJ set in an actual cabaret. And finally, this was a collaboration between a group of women from the Dar Bellarj Foundation and German-Turkish artist, Ulku Sungun, who proposed them to read and reappropriate a text that she had written about somehow femininity from her own perspective. And so the women of Dar Bellarj reinterpreted her story from their own personal experiences as Moroccan women, let's say, or women from living in Marrakech.
Thank you. So then I wanted to ask you, so we've been talking a little bit about how to work within the kind of fabric of Marrakech. What are some of the challenges, some specificities of the city? And another element that I would like to kind of jump to is more of a regional dimension. So one central element in your work that you've been reinforcing throughout is this idea of structuring further and further and creating relations and exchanges across Morocco, but also the Northern African region, which is one that might lack historically some of the infrastructure or funding for research and development of contemporary art projects. So this brings already into the picture a dimension of, historically at least, limited resources, I assume. But still, you work very much in this direction across many different programs to also highlight, I guess, commonalities and foster alliances, and also to kind of develop through processes that explore a very fine line between informality on the one hand and a more institutional dimension on the other. So I wanted to ask you if you could talk to us about some other programs that you develop at this more regional level, and if you could also address this sort of specific juncture in which you develop somehow this networked approach to the work that you do.
There's this project that have been developed a few years ago to respond to a call. It was a European call for the countries from the MENA region, Middle East, North Africa, and we responded. We got a fund to respond to this call, bringing together different partners from the region, and this project is called Curators, and brought together several partners. But before that project, there was the premises of the idea of bringing together artists from different countries of North Africa, just because at some point we were working with local artists, and we got a lot of requests from artists from Europe to come do residencies at the 18 in Morocco in general, in different, or to link them with other structures in Morocco. And so I think at that moment we started to question ourselves about how we can link with other initiatives, similar initiatives in the region, and artists as well, of course, initiatives that could open us to the scenes in Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, etc. So we got an idea of doing this exhibition that brings together 5 artists from the 5 Maghrebian countries. And so for that project that is called Kauka, we have invited artist Younes Wabali, who's a Moroccan French artist who lives in Brussels now, I think, who responded to this invitation. And together we co-curated this, this exhibition and series of talks and events. And it was also the premise of how the formats of programs of the 18 have been shaped afterwards. So there is a main exhibition that brings afterwards a series of gatherings and talks that will also bring more content to the topic of the exhibition. So Younes had decided to link us with this artist because his network was already developed. He has been doing residencies in many countries, in basically all these Maghrebian countries. So he had also already the network there. So it was quite easy for him to just call the people that he knew. It was also a network of friends and working and based on friendship. So one of the main difficulty that we found at that moment, because the 5 countries were so Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, Libya, and Mauritania. In Libya, we didn't know anyone, so it took us longer to find the artist, to link with the institutions there. And I think at that time we tried to connect with the British Council, who is one of the only institutions in Tripoli who has been doing quite some cultural initiatives that could give us some names, and also with Mauritania, it wasn't obvious. I can't really remember how exactly we came to select Hamidine. Maybe Francesca, you remember, but I definitely don't remember that.
I think there was a Brussels connection because Hamidine was already in Brussels.
Yeah.
I forgot.
But Kauka was already that project where we wanted to explore which were the similarities between our scene, where we could connect with kind of bridges we could build on this region, on these countries that are so close, but at the same time have like strict borders between them. And so we know that somehow it's easier for Europeans to come to Morocco, for artists in general, than for an Algerian or Tunisian, maybe, or Mauritanian or Libyan, anyone from Africa. For most of the African countries, you need a visa to come to Morocco. So all these questions were for us important to raise at some point. And the series of talks were very important and very interesting, because those were the moments where we invited historians, curators, researchers who have been working on the region and have helped us to understand better the situation and to understand the scene and the dynamic of the region, or of these countries, because the dynamic of the region, I don't really think there is a dynamic that brings together all these countries, but rather they do collaborate, artists or initiatives do collaborate in very specific moments, or they gather for a biennale or for art fairs, but it's not something that is obvious, like a scene that we can call a scene. That was a very important project to Le 18, and since this one, I think this question has been always coming back. And when we got the funding from Creative Europe, am I right? From the European Union for this major project called Kibrit. Again, it was this was not really a choice. It was one of the elements of the call was to be a group of a network or a group of initiatives from this region, which doesn't make it the same. On the one hand, there is an initiative that's probably coming from the 18 or from Morocco, and on the other hand, there is a funder that is asking to put together a project with in a certain context, in a certain region of the world. So Kibrit was also very intense and very interesting because it raised also the questions of borders. While there was one of our partners in Palestine that where we couldn't really send one of the artists who was supposed to go do a residency in Palestine, and that was never possible. There was something else I wanted to raise about the Kibrit. Sorry, I just lost my my idea. But
to me, the point of, maybe I'll jump in. The point of Kibrit brought together were seven institutions, and most of which knew each other already, and we had been collaborating informally in various ways. And by the way, Cow, this previous project we were mentioning, was one way to get to know some of those future partners too. I think one criticality in this, in what Kibrit and its proceedings unveiled, is that there was an external demand to create a formal network, a formalized network that had to answer certain requests or certain ways in which you are expected to manifest that you are a network, being travels together that were clashing a little bit with the realities in which we were living. So, for instance, we transformed quite a lot the way in which we had originally conceived and presented the program of Kibrit once we were granted the money, because while originally we had thought of doing a lot of trips to meet each other in the different contexts, we suddenly, most of us felt it was almost inappropriate to use all that money just for our own travelings, while we are all small realities that struggle also in already doing what we could do. So we tried to, like, really at the inception of the project, to rethink what we already had in common and how to try to bring or knit together what we already had in common, while by firstly supporting like individual projects, but also sharing them, sharing outcomes, sharing methodologies with the others. And yeah, I mean, of course, that was wasn't a very easy thing to do, because I think it already showed the complexity of working together with the distance that is systematically there, and that it's something that maybe we have been seeing a little bit more in the last few months too, like how to be together in times of immobility,
hardship. Yes.
Strandedness. Yeah.
I wanted to take the cue from this because unfortunately we're about to run out of time. It's insane how it flies every time. But I wanted to bring forward somehow one last question. And as I always have to do in the end, I'll combine two that I had prepared so that we can talk a little bit for the last 5 minutes about this. And in the meantime, I'm encouraging whoever is watching and might want to ask a question to do so through the comment section, both on Facebook and YouTube, so that then we can field 1 or 2 questions depending on how much time we have left. But I wanted to continue discussing this collective element, because another key project that we have discussed while preparing, and that we also featured on social media in advance of the project, and that kind of stems from Les 18, or in any case has this very close intertwined relationship, is Qanat, which expands on this collective dimension of your work. And as you write when discussing this type of project, it cultivates what you define the not yet. So I wanted to ask you, how does Qanat work through this notion of not yet, while also addressing, as you were saying, this ecological element through an ecological lens, and also through notions of care? And then the other thing that I just wanted to put on top, just to make it easier for you, but because I really want to bring it forward as part of this conversation, is that throughout this process, and you've referred to this briefly before. Oh, there we go. I was wondering whether we would have an apparition this time. One element that you have briefly mentioned, but that is kind of common to all these processes and projects that you work on, at least through Qanat and so on and so forth, is that you really operate in a multilingual space, right? Marrakech itself is a city that lives across Arabic, French, Darija, Amazigh. And so how do you address this complexity of meaning, of discourse formation, and of language, of understanding really each other through these projects? Then maybe also through Qanat, since we're talking about the collective right now.
Yeah, I mean, well, the very first, just to be precise, but the notion of the not yet that we have been using to talk about Qanat itself is draws from one of the many collaborators of Qanat, but a very important one, I think. There is Jeanne van Eswijk, an artist, Dutch artist, that as for the other members of Qanat, that today does define itself as a collective, which wasn't the case 2 years ago, which is something that I think is quite interesting. But so that I met and that I invited to be involved in thinking what this project could become. And Jeanne was actually, I really believe, very crucial in helping pushing forth this collective in becoming that today Qanat is. But to explain, to do one step backward, Qanat is a project that we started within Kibrit. So, and was originally articulated and thought as a research project with artists in residence, an exhibition, and a series of conversations exploring, as I mentioned, the politics and poetics of water, moving from the heritage of the water cultures and water civilizations of Marrakech. There is a very fascinating and interesting and unique one, and I won't elaborate on this here because we're already out of time. But I invite you all to look at it, because it's a very interesting culture that is typical of Marrakech, but in a broader region as well. And so the project opened up a lot of desires from us to keep it continuing and to think in it further, but also to think of it as one of the many ways that we have to root more and into the city and its dynamics, and in that sense, I could relate to the thinking of Jeanne when she speaks about preparing for the not yet, there is also a way of how to think of being collectively when you don't even know what the collective can be. How can you, I mean, as she says, how can you be together in territories that are fractured? And this notion of fractures and working with or in engage those fractures, I think it's at the core of what Kanat would like to be or be doing in its in Marrakech, but it's also what Les 18 is trying to do at large, and to try to connect it with the question of languages. Languages are one of those. I mean, the question of are one source of fractures and fragmentations in a way, in a context like Marrakech, because the multilingualism that exists is also heritage. Heritage of various forms of and waves of colonialism and neocolonialisms too. So that's also it's a very complex. It's a very complex and delicate theme that is not always easy to navigate because you have. I mean, we have been confronting the fact that in the context of, in the case of languages, the languages that are finally most shared in common somehow are maybe not the ones we would like to speak the most. And in any case, of course, it shows clearly the inequalities that one may have in mastering one language over another. So also in terms of the languages, we've been trying to be multilingual as much as possible and to privilege one language over another, moving from French to English to Darija, to way more lately and still very limitedly Amazigh, depending also on the people we're talking to, and so the specific activity that we're doing, the audience that we know would be coming more easily to an event or another. I guess it sounded extremely abstract. I'm sorry.
No, but it is one of those questions that sits right in between, right? How you can physically and practically address certain elements and how you decide intentionally to structure the work around that. So not too much. Don't worry about that, Francesca. Thank you. So I see that we have one quick question that is, I guess, more an opening of a path. I just wanted to show you, and then maybe we can make a little connection afterwards. We have someone who's asking how to establish a dialogue, like how to work even beyond the region. I know that you have worked, for instance, in the Mediterranean area and so on, but also how to work past. And we have 1 minute actually, but I'll let you address the question if you would like. And if not, we can ask Max to email us and we can put you guys in touch.
Can you show the question again?
Sure, of course.
Yeah, basically just write us. Les 18 have been open since the beginning to any type of collaboration and any kind of of exchange, whether it's from the region or from international and broader regions and countries. So we're always happy, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Just a matter of which are the project that we're working on and focused on at the moment. And we are also a small space, a small team, and we tend to be very trying to do a lot. So sometimes we just need to take more. We might take more time to respond, but
Right,
it is always
time.
Yeah.
And we can put you also in touch. I'm going to share our email address as well for Call for Curators in case we're happy to act as a bridge. So thank you to both of you. It's been really very, very nice. And I hope we can continue these conversations and share some of these resources that you'll be discussing with us through our page, through the website. So thanks to both of you. And I want to remind, for those who are still with us watching, that we will be back in 2 weeks on Tuesday, October 20th at 6:30 p.m. Berlin time, as always. And we will announce our speaker in the coming days. So for whoever is interested and hasn't done so already, you can subscribe through this page to the Call for Curators newsletter and stay up to date on all these amazing conversations that we're trying to establish across different geographies and contexts. So thank you, Laila. Thank you, Francesca, so very much again. And
Thank you, Nadia.
until soon, we will keep on following the amazing work you're doing in Marrakech. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Thank you.